Hey iPrevent viewers, welcome back to our YouTube channel. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and that is the topic of our video today. This video will contain information about sensitive topics, including physical and sexual violence. If you feel like this content may be triggering for you, feel free to click off and go watch some of our other YouTube videos. This month is a time dedicated to the survivors of domestic violence and giving them a safe place to speak up and end the cycle. First, let's talk a little about what domestic violence is. Domestic violence is a broad term that includes, but is not limited to, physical violence. This is when a person tries to physically harm another by hitting, kicking, or using some type of physical force against another person. Sexual violence. This is forcing or attempting to force a partner to take part in any physical or non-physical sexual act, including touching and sexting, without consent. Stalking. This can be overlooked but is a form of domestic violence. Stalking is a pattern of unwanted attention and contact by a partner that results in concern and fear for one's own safety. Psychological aggression. This is another form of domestic violence that can be ignored but is also very harmful to the survivor. It is the use of verbal or nonverbal communication by one person with the intention of emotionally or mentally harming another person. Often, this is a way to exert control or gain power over this person. And lastly, homicide. Sometimes domestic violence can escalate to homicide, or one partner taking the life of the other. Tragically, 1 in 2 female murder victims in the US are killed by intimate partners. This is why it is important to identify and put an end to domestic violence before it escalates. Often, domestic violence happens continuously and is a tool used by an individual for power and control over their partner. Abusers sometimes will use one or more of these types of domestic violence at once, so these experiences may overlap. Obviously, domestic violence has harmful effects, but I want to discuss the variety of impacts that these experiences can have for survivors because it is different for everyone. When someone is being physically abused, they can get different injuries, but a large portion of those who experience physical violence do not receive medical treatment for their injuries. Not only is domestic violence costly to the US economy, but it also causes survivors to lose many days of paid work each year, or even lose their jobs completely. Many survivors can develop health conditions, sometimes chronic or lifetime conditions that affect the heart, digestive and reproductive systems, and more due to the stress of domestic violence. Mentally, survivors are at higher risk for developing depression and PTSD as a result of the violence they experience. For example, some people will experience flashbacks to the abuse, which is a symptom of PTSD. Survivors can feel distrustful of others or be uncomfortable when left alone with someone of the opposite sex. It is also common to feel easily overwhelmed, anxious, irritated, or to cry without explanation. Although it may not be part of mainstream conversation, domestic violence is extremely common in the United States. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men will experience severe domestic violence in their lifetime. So if you have experienced domestic violence or are experiencing these impacts, please know that you are not alone. In order to take action against domestic violence, it is important to be able to recognize some of the signs of domestic violence. Especially at the beginning of relationships, It's not always easy to tell if it will later become abusive. Many times, signs do not appear overnight, but will intensify over time. Here are some of the common signs that a partner may be abusive. Extreme jealousy when you spend time away from your partner. Preventing or discouraging you from spending time with friends or family. Insulting or demeaning you, particularly in front of other people. Controlling finances without discussing it with you. Pressuring you to have sex. Preventing you from making your own decisions. Intimidating you through threatening looks, actions, or weapons. Or destroying your belongings or home. If you are experiencing domestic violence or are afraid your situation might escalate, there are resources for you to get help. The National Domestic Violence Hotline website can help you create an interactive plan for safety made just for your situation. Visit thehotline.org/plan-for-safety. The hotline's website also has lots of great information and advice if you want to learn more. Here in New Orleans, the New Orleans Family Justice Center, or NOFJC, has a variety of resources for people experiencing domestic violence. Services at NOFJC are free of charge, confidential, and voluntary, and you do not need to get the police involved to access these resources. The resources include a 24-hour crisis hotline whose number is 504-866-9554. Crisis services like safe housing and safety planning, individual and group counseling, advocacy services and case management, legal services, and healing activities like yoga, art group, massage, and more. Now I want to switch gears and discuss some of the risk factors, or factors that increase the likelihood someone will commit acts of domestic violence. These factors include low self-esteem, low education, depression, heavy alcohol or drug use, prior history of being physically abused, hostility towards women, being isolated from other people, and witnessing domestic violence as a child. Keep in mind that none of these factors are an excuse for being abusive towards a partner, but they can partially explain the reason that someone becomes abusive. Often, people abuse because of a desire to gain or maintain control and power. Abusive people believe they have a right to control their partner's lives and that their own feelings should be a priority. There are also a few factors that make people less likely to commit domestic violence. These are called protective factors. They are social support and high-quality friendships. The most important way to put an end to domestic violence is to prevent it before it has even happened. Here are some of the things the CDC says we can do to stop the cycle. 1. Teach safety and healthy relationship skills. We can do this by providing social-emotional learning programs to youth in schools. Additionally, research shows that the earlier these interventions start, the more effective they are. 2. Disrupt developmental pathways towards domestic violence. For example, early childhood home visits can be done more often to make sure children are not watching or experiencing violence at home. 3. Creating protective environments. We can do this by improving school safety and climate, changing the physical and social environments of neighborhoods to make sure they are safer for children. 4. Strengthen economic support for families to increase household financial security. This will take away a risk factor for domestic violence. Now, I want to talk about how you can get involved with domestic violence. If you live in the New Orleans area, like I mentioned, NOFJC is a great resource for those experiencing domestic violence. You can get involved with this organization by volunteering. NOFJC has volunteers who work in medical or victim advocacy, childcare, and community outreach. If you are interested in this, you can email info@nofjc.org for more information. Thank you for joining us to learn more about domestic violence during Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It is important to discuss this topic so we do not forget about the millions of survivors who have suffered, and we can make changes to decrease rates of domestic violence in the US. That's all for today, iPrevent viewers. As always, iPrevent is here for you with free health resources like condoms, lube, HIV and Hep C testing, and Medicaid enrollment. Just give us a call at 504-418-4955 or DM us on any of our social media at iPrevent_OHL. See you next time.